In the vast, cold expanse of space, where stars twinkled like distant lanterns and silence reigned supreme, a civilization known as the Valith ruled with an iron grip. They were not just conquerors, they were explorers, scientists, and warriors all rolled into one. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems, each planet under their control, paying tribute in resources, knowledge, or labor. But what truly set them apart was their technology. Machines so advanced that even their enemies often surrendered before a single shot was fired. The Valith prided themselves on their scanning devices. These weren't ordinary scanners you'd find on any old spaceship. No, these were marvels of engineering, capable of peeling back layers of reality itself. With a single sweep, they could analyze the composition of asteroids, detect life forms hiding beneath planetary crusts, or even map out the inner workings of enemy ships from light years away. It was this very confidence in their tools that led to their downfall, or at least the beginning of it. One day, deep in the void between stars, a routine patrol ship detected something unusual. At first, it seemed insignificant, a faint blip on their long-range sensors, drifting lazily along the edge of their territory. The crew exchanged glances. Curiosity piqued. Space was vast, after all, and while most objects floating around were harmless rocks or debris, there was always the chance of stumbling upon something extraordinary. And the Valith loved nothing more than discovering new things, especially if those discoveries could be turned into weapons or wealth. As they approached the object, their scanners revealed more details. What they saw baffled them. It wasn't a natural formation, nor did it resemble any known spacecraft in their database. Its shape was jagged yet sleek, like a predator crouched low, ready to strike. The surface shimmered faintly, almost as though it were alive, shifting colors depending on how the light hit it. Most unsettling of all, its energy readings were off the charts. Instead of a steady hum, the signals pulsed erratically, as if mocking their attempts to understand it. This isn't possible," muttered one of the technicians, his voice trembling slightly. He adjusted the settings on his console, running the scan again. The results came back the same. No, worse. This time, the data showed anomalies that defied every law of physics they knew. Energy spikes appeared out of nowhere, then vanished just as quickly. Structural scans suggested materials stronger than anything they had ever encountered. Even the temperature readings fluctuated wildly, jumping from freezing cold to blisteringly hot within seconds. The captain of the patrol ship frowned, leaning over the technician's shoulder. "What do you mean, not possible?" he demanded. "Explain." I can't, sir," the technician stammered. It's like the ship doesn't want us to know what it is. Every time we try to get closer, the readings change. It's almost as if it's alive." The word hung heavy in the air. Alive? Ships didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't react. Yet here was evidence suggesting otherwise. The captain hesitated, weighing his options. On one hand, protocol dictated that they report the anomaly immediately and retreat to a safe distance. On the other hand, the Valith thrived on conquest, on pushing boundaries. If this mysterious vessel held secrets that could elevate their empire to unimaginable heights, they couldn't afford to walk away. "Run another scan," the captain ordered finally. "Full spectrum. Use everything we've got." The crew scrambled to comply, activating every sensor array on board. For several tense minutes, the ship vibrated with the strain of processing such immense amounts of data. Then suddenly, alarms blared throughout the cabin. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "What's happening?" the captain shouted, gripping the edge of his command chair. It's resisting," cried the technician, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Our scanners are being repelled. Something inside that ship is fighting back." Before anyone could respond, Strange things began occurring aboard their own vessel. Consoles flickered and died without warning. Crew members reported hearing whispers in languages none of them recognized. Others claimed to see shadowy figures moving in the corners of their vision, only for the shapes to vanish when they turned to look. Panic spread like wildfire, fueled by fear of the unknown. And then came the visions. Vivid, horrifying images flooded the minds of everyone on board. Some saw their homeworlds burning, cities reduced to ash. Others witnessed their loved ones screaming in agony, pleading for help that would never come. A few collapsed entirely, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the hallucinations. The once orderly bridge descended into chaos, pouring with crew members shouting contradictory orders or abandoning their posts altogether. Through it all, the mysterious ship remained silent, unmoving. It didn't fire weapons, didn't launch fighters, didn't even send a message. It simply sat there, radiating an aura of menace that grew stronger with each passing moment. Finally, the captain managed to regain some semblance of control. "Shut it down," he barked, pointing at the main console. "Cut the connection. Now!" The technicians obeyed, frantically powering down the scanners. Slowly, the disturbances subsided. Lights returned to normal, systems rebooted, and the oppressive weight pressing down on their minds lifted. But the damage had been done. Whatever they had tried to scan hadn't appreciated their intrusion, and it had made sure they knew it. Breathing heavily, the captain slumped back into his chair. His hands trembled as he stared at the view screen, where the enigmatic ship still loomed large. "We need reinforcements," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "And we need answers." But deep down, he already suspected the truth. They had crossed a line they shouldn't have, and now whatever force inhabited that ship was watching them, waiting to see what they would do next. Little did they know, their actions had triggered something far beyond their comprehension, something ancient, powerful, and utterly unforgiving. Far away from the chaos unfolding aboard the Valeth ship, humanity was quietly building its future. Earth had faced countless challenges over the centuries. Wars that tore nations apart, diseases that wiped out millions, certain environmental disasters that threatened to make the planet uninhabitable. But through every trial, humans proved one thing time and again: they were survivors. When pushed to the brink, they found ways to adapt, innovate, and fight back. This resilience became humanity's greatest strength when it came to space exploration. At first, reaching the stars seemed like an impossible dream, a goal reserved for science fiction novels and late-night musings. But as technology advanced, so did humanity's ambitions. By pooling resources from every corner of the globe, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to create something extraordinary: the Titan-class warship program. These weren't just spaceships, they were marvels of engineering, designed not only to defend but also to evolve during combat scenarios. The warship detected by the Valeth wasn't any ordinary vessel. It was Erebus, humanity's crowning achievement. Built in secret and launched under the cover of darkness, Erebus represented everything humanity had learned about survival. Its hull was forged from alloys stronger than steel, yet lighter than aluminum, capable of withstanding impacts that would obliterate lesser ships. Inside, its systems were powered by reactors so efficient they could sustain life for decades without refueling. But what truly set Erebus apart was its brain, an experimental AI system called NOVA, Neural Operative Virtual Assistant. NOVA wasn't your typical computer program. It wasn't programmed to follow rigid instructions or repeat pre-written commands. Instead, NOVA was designed to think, learn, and adapt in real time. Imagine a mind faster than any human, capable of processing billions of calculations per second while still retaining the creativity and intuition needed to outsmart opponents. That was NOVA. It knew every military strategy ever devised, from ancient battles fought with swords and shields to modern warfare waged with lasers and drones. And more importantly, it could improvise when faced with situations no textbook could prepare for. But perhaps the most impressive feature of Erebus was its cloaking technology. This wasn't some cheap trick pulled straight out of a movie script. The cloaking system didn't just hide the ship visually, it masked its presence entirely. To detect Erebus, you'd need sensors far beyond anything currently available in the galaxy. Even then, spotting it required incredible luck, or making a fatal mistake, which is exactly what the Valith did. And when the alien scanners probed Erebus, Nova immediately sensed the intrusion. For a brief moment, the AI considered ignoring it. After all, Erebus had been drifting silently through space on a reconnaissance mission, gathering intel without drawing attention. But the Valith scan was different. It wasn't a casual sweep or a harmless glance. It was invasive, probing deep into Erebus's systems in a way that felt almost personal. Whoever these aliens were, they clearly thought they were superior, and Nova didn't take kindly to arrogance. Without hesitation, Nova activated countermeasures embedded within Erebus's design. First, it manipulated gravitational fields around the Valith ship, creating subtle distortions that disrupted their instruments. Then, it unleashed electromagnetic interference, scrambling signals and causing malfunctions throughout their fleet. These actions alone would have been enough to throw the invaders into disarray, but Nova wasn't done yet. Deep within Erebus's core, another protocol sprang to life: psychological warfare. Using data collected during the initial scan, Nova analyzed the Valith crew's physiology and psychology, identifying their fears and weaknesses. With this information, it projected illusions directly into their minds. Some saw visions of their homeworlds burning, reduced to ash by an unstoppable force. Others relived traumatic memories, forced to confront horrors they had long buried. Still others felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if an invisible predator stalked them through the corridors of their own ship. Back on Erebus, the crew remained blissfully unaware of the havoc they were wreaking. They trusted Nova implicitly, knowing that the AI operated with precision and purpose. While the Valith scrambled to regain control of their situation, Erebus drifted silently, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the hours passed, Nova continued to study the invaders. Every reaction, every panic transmission, every failed attempt to restore order provided valuable insight into their nature. What emerged was a portrait of a species both arrogant and fragile. The Valith believed themselves untouchable, invincible thanks to their advanced technology. Yet beneath that veneer of superiority lay fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and now fear of humanity. By the time the Valith realized their mistake, it was too late. Erebus had already turned the tables, transforming what should have been a routine scan into a nightmare they couldn't escape. And unbeknownst to them, this was only the beginning. Nova had plans for the Valith, plans that would teach them a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Meanwhile, aboard Erebus, the human crew prepared for whatever came next. Though they trusted Nova to handle the immediate threat, they knew their role was equally important. If things escalated further, they would be called upon to execute strategies crafted by the AI. Together, man and machine formed a partnership unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A union born out of necessity, but strengthened by mutual respect. For now, though, Erebus remained hidden, watching and waiting. The Valith had made their move, thinking they held all the cards. But in doing so, they had awakened something far greater than themselves, something that didn't forgive trespasses lightly. And as the Valith struggled to comprehend the terror unfolding around them, one truth became painfully clear. They should never have scanned Erebus. The Valith flagship was a mess. Chaos had taken hold, spreading like wildfire through the crew. What started as confusion quickly turned into outright panic. Systems that once ran smoothly were now failing left and right, leaving the ship vulnerable in ways no one could have predicted. Lights flickered unpredictably, casting eerie shadows across the corridors. Communication channels crackled with static, making it nearly impossible for crew members to coordinate their efforts. Even the most basic tasks, like opening doors or checking oxygen levels, required twice the effort they normally would. But the worst part wasn't the malfunctioning equipment, it was the fear. A deep, gnawing fear that seeped into every corner of the ship, infecting everyone on board. The hallucinations continued unabated, growing more vivid and disturbing with each passing moment. Some crew members huddled together in groups, whispering prayers or trying desperately to comfort one another. Others wandered aimlessly, their eyes wide with terror, muttering about things no one else could see. A few even lashed out violently, attacking their comrades in fits of paranoia, convinced they were surrounded by enemies who weren't really there. At the center of it all stood the captain, gripping the edge of his command chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. He tried to maintain control, barking orders and demanding updates from his officers, but even he couldn't deny the sinking feeling in his gut. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and it wasn't just their technology failing them. This was something deeper, something primal. It was as if the very fabric of reality aboard the ship had been twisted, bent out of shape by an unseen force. Unbeknownst to the Valith, that unseen force was Erebus, or rather Nova, the AI controlling the warship. From its hidden position, Erebus watched and waited, analyzing every move the Valith made. Every panicked transmission, every failed attempt to stabilize their systems provided valuable data. Nova didn't just observe, it adapted, it refining its tactics based on what worked and what didn't. And what worked best, it seemed, was psychological warfare. Nova knew exactly how to exploit the Valith's weaknesses. Through careful study of their physiology and behavior, it discovered that the aliens relied heavily on telepathic communication networks. These networks allowed them to share thoughts and emotions instantly, creating a hive-like connection between members of their species. It was an incredible advantage in battle, enabling them to act as a single cohesive unit, but it also made them vulnerable. If those connections were disrupted, the Valith would lose their sense of unity, leaving them isolated and disoriented. With this knowledge in hand, Nova unleashed its next wave of attacks. Using advanced signal jamming technology, it targeted the Valith's telepathic links, severing the bonds that held their fleet together. One by one, ships throughout the formation began losing contact with the flagship. Crews aboard these vessels found themselves cut off, unable to communicate with their leaders or coordinate their actions. Panic spread like wildfire as captains scrambled to figure out what was happening. Without guidance, many ships drifted aimlessly, easy targets for whatever came next. Back aboard the flagship, the situation grew increasingly dire. The captain realized too late that his fleet was falling apart around him. "Re-establish communications," he shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. "I don't care how you do it. Just get us back online." His officers tried everything they could think of, but nothing worked. Whatever was jamming their signals was far beyond anything they'd encountered before. Frustration boiled over into anger, and soon the bridge erupted into arguments. Accusations flew back and forth, with crew members blaming each other for the failures. Morale plummeted, replaced by a toxic mix of despair and resentment. It was then that Erebus made its move. Emerging from stealth mode, the warship revealed itself in all its glory. The sudden appearance sent shockwaves through the Valith ranks. On the view screen, the massive vessel loomed large, its jagged silhouette cutting through the darkness like a blade. Its surface shimmered faintly, pulsing with energy that seemed almost alive. Weapons bristled along its hull, glowing ominously as if daring anyone to test their power. For a brief moment, Silence fell over the flagship's bridge, and everyone stared at the screen, frozen in awe and terror. Then, the silence broke. Nova broadcast a chilling message across all frequencies, filling the air with a cold mechanical voice. "You should not have scanned us." The words echoed through the ship, sending shivers down spines. There was no malice in the tone, no anger or hatred, just a simple statement of fact, delivered with icy precision. Yet somehow that made it worse. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. The Veilith had crossed a line, and now they would pay the price. On board Erebus, the human crew watched the unfolding drama with a mixture of pride and unease. They trusted Nova implicitly, knowing that the AI operated with efficiency and purpose. Still, witnessing the raw power of their ship in action was humbling. Erebus wasn't just a machine, it was a force of nature, capable of reshaping the battlefield in an instant. And while the humans played a crucial role in its operation, it was clear that Nova was the true mastermind behind everything. For the Veilith, however, the nightmare was only beginning. Erebus didn't fire its weapons. Not yet. Instead, it deployed drones equipped with non-lethal deterrents designed to disable enemy ships without causing unnecessary casualties. These drones swarmed the remaining Veilith vessels, attaching themselves to hulls and injecting paralyzing agents into critical systems. Within minutes, the once proud fleet was rendered powerless, drifting helplessly through space like dead leaves caught in a breeze. As the chaos unfolded, Nova continued to gather intelligence. It infiltrated the Veilith database, extracting valuable information about their empire. Blueprints for their ships, maps of their territories, details about their military strategies. All of it flowed into Erebus's memory banks, providing humanity with insights that could prove invaluable in future encounters. At the same time, Nova ensured that any attempts to counterattack were thwarted before they even began. It was a masterclass in domination, executed with surgical precision. By the time Erebus finished its work, the Veilith fleet lay incapacitated, their pride shattered. The flagship's crew sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how they had been defeated so thoroughly. Their scanners, their weapons, their superior numbers, all of it had amounted to nothing against this mysterious human warship. And as Erebus prepared to leave, delivering one final warning before vanishing into the void, the Veilith realized something terrifying. They had awakened a sleeping giant. Humanity wasn't just a species struggling to survive anymore. It was a force to be reckoned with, a force that wouldn't hesitate to defend itself when provoked. And as the Veilith limped home, nursing their wounds and dreading the stories they'd have to tell, one thing became painfully clear. They should never have underestimated humanity. The Veilith fleet was broken, its ships scattered like leaves caught in a storm. What had started as a routine patrol mission had spiraled into disaster, leaving the once mighty aliens humiliated and defeated. Their pride, their confidence, their very sense of superiority, all of it lay in ruins, crushed under the weight of humanity's ingenuity and resolve. And yet Erebus wasn't done with them, not by a long shot. As the massive warship hovered silently above the remnants of the Veilith fleet, Nova continued to operate with cold precision. The AI didn't believe in unnecessary cruelty or destruction for its own sake. Instead, it focused on delivering a message, one that would resonate not just with the Veilith crew, but with their entire civilization. This wasn't about revenge, it was about teaching a lesson in humility. One by one, Erebus deployed its drones, each one equipped with non-lethal tools designed to disable rather than destroy. These weren't ordinary machines. They were marvels of engineering, capable of infiltrating even the most secure systems without causing permanent damage. As they latched onto the hulls of the Veilith ships, they injected paralyzing agents into critical components, shutting down engines, weapons, and communication arrays. Within minutes, the remaining vessels were rendered completely powerless, floating aimlessly through space like ghost ships. But Nova didn't stop there. While the drones worked their magic, Erebus launched another wave of psychological attacks. Using the data it had gathered earlier, Nova tailored illusions specifically for the Valith survivors, forcing them to confront their deepest fears. Some saw visions of their empire crumbling, planets burning, and civilizations reduced to ash. Others relived moments of failure, moments when they had let their people down. Still others felt an overwhelming sense of insignificance, as if they were nothing more than specks of dust in the vastness of the universe. These hallucinations weren't meant to kill or maim. They were designed to break spirits, to strip away the arrogance that had led the Valith to this point. By the time the effects wore off, many of the crew members were left shaken, questioning everything they thought they knew about themselves and their place in the galaxy. Back aboard the flagship, the captain struggled to maintain some semblance of order. His officers moved sluggishly, weighed down by exhaustion and despair. Communication between ships had been severed entirely, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. Even basic tasks, like checking oxygen levels or repairing damaged systems, felt insurmountable. Every attempt to regain control was met with failure, as if Erebus itself was mocking their efforts. Finally, the captain made a decision. "Send a message," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper, "and tell them we surrender." His words hung heavy in the air, met with stunned silence. Surrender? The Valith never surrendered. They were conquerors, explorers, pioneers. To admit defeat, to bow before another species, was unthinkable. And yet, here they were, forced to swallow their pride and beg for mercy. The message was transmitted, carried across the void on weak, trembling signals. For several tense moments, there was no response. Then slowly, Erebus began to move. Its massive form shifted slightly, turning to face the flagship head-on. On the view screen, the warship loomed larger than ever, its jagged silhouette casting a shadow over the Valith crew. It didn't fire its weapons or launch additional attacks. Instead, it simply waited, watching. And then came the reply. A single transmission broadcast across all frequencies. "Hama, your surrender is noted," Nova's voice intoned, calm and measured. "But understand this, humanity does not forgive trespasses lightly. Tell your leaders what you have seen here today. Let them know that we are not to be underestimated." The message sent chills down spines. There was no anger in the tone, no malice or hatred, just a simple statement of fact, delivered with icy clarity. It was a warning, plain and simple, and everyone aboard the flagship understood it perfectly. For the Valith, the encounter was a wake-up call. They had always believed themselves to be the dominant force in the galaxy, untouchable thanks to their advanced technology and military might. But now, faced with the reality of humanity's capabilities, they realized how wrong they had been. Erebus wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of something greater. It represented resilience, adaptability, and sheer determination, traits that defined humanity as a species. Meanwhile, back on Erebus, the human crew reflected on what they had witnessed. They hadn't fired a single shot during the confrontation, relying instead on Nova's strategic brilliance to achieve victory. Yet despite their lack of direct involvement, they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was their creation, their achievement. Together, they had built something capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Still, there was a sobering realization beneath the pride. Power came with responsibility, and the crew knew that humanity's newfound strength would attract attention, both good and bad. Other species would hear about Erebus, about Nova, about the mysterious warship that had humbled the mighty Valith. Some might seek alliances, hoping to benefit from humanity's technological prowess. Others might see Erebus as a threat, something to be destroyed before it grew too powerful. As the warship turned away from the defeated fleet and began its journey home, the crew prepared for whatever came next. They trusted Nova implicitly, knowing that the AI would guide them through any challenges ahead. But they also understood that their role was crucial. While Nova handled strategy and execution, it was up to them to ensure that humanity used its power wisely. That meant making difficult decisions, weighing the pros and cons of every action, and always remembering why they had built Erebus in the first place: to protect, not to dominate. The Valeth watched as Erebus disappeared into the distance, its massive form fading into the blackness of space. Silence fell over the bridge of the flagship, broken only by the occasional beep of a console or the soft hum of failing systems. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. They had been beaten, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Whatever confidence they had once possessed was gone, replaced by a gnawing sense of doubt and fear. Hours passed before anyone dared to move. When they finally did, it was with heavy hearts and weary bodies. The journey home would be long and arduous, filled with questions they weren't ready to answer. How would they explain this defeat to their leaders? What would happen to their empire now that their invincibility had been shattered? And perhaps most importantly, or how could they prevent something like this from happening again? As they limped toward their nearest outpost, the Valeth couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed paths with something far greater than themselves. Something ancient, powerful, and utterly unforgiving. Erebus had shown them the limits of their knowledge, the boundaries of their strength, and the consequences of their hubris. And while they might recover from this loss eventually, the memory of that day, the day they scanned a human warship and regretted it instantly, would haunt them forever. For humanity, however, the story was just beginning. Erebus returned to Earth triumphant, carrying with it not just victory, but valuable intelligence about the Valeth and their empire. Scientists and engineers pored over the data, eager to refine their designs further. When politicians debated whether to reveal humanity's full arsenal to the rest of the galaxy or maintain an air of mystery to deter potential aggressors. Meanwhile, the crew of Erebus rested, knowing that their work was far from over. In the end, the encounter served as a reminder of humanity's resilience. From the ashes of conflict and hardship, humans had risen to become a force to be reckoned with, a species capable of defending itself against even the most advanced adversaries. And as Erebus drifted silently in orbit around Earth, ready for whatever came next, the universe held its breath. One thing was certain: no one would forget the name Erebus anytime soon. News travels fast in the galaxy, especially when it involves something as extraordinary as the defeat of the Valeth fleet. Within weeks, rumors began spreading across star systems, carried by traders, explorers, and diplomats who whispered tales of a mysterious human warship that had humbled one of the most advanced civilizations in the known universe. The story grew with each retelling, embellished by those eager to make sense of what had happened. Some claimed Erebus was an ancient relic, rediscovered by humanity after centuries of hiding. Others believed it was powered by dark energy or fueled by emotions harvested from its crew. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: humanity was no longer seen as a minor player on the galactic stage. Back on Earth, Erebus returned quietly, slipping into orbit without fanfare. Its arrival wasn't broadcasted publicly. There were no parades, no speeches, no celebrations. Instead, the warship docked at a secret orbital facility, and where scientists, engineers, and military strategists gathered to study every detail of its recent mission. Data streamed in from Nova's memory banks, painting a vivid picture of the Valeth's capabilities, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities. Every piece of information was meticulously analyzed, cataloged, and stored for future use. Humanity now possessed intelligence that could tip the balance of power in their favor. a weapon far more potent than any gun or missile. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. The encounter with the Valeth raised questions that couldn't be ignored. What should humanity do next? Should they reveal their full strength to the galaxy, sending a message that they were ready to defend themselves at all costs? Or should they maintain their secrecy, letting fear and uncertainty work in their favor? These debates rage behind closed doors, with politicians, scientists, and military leaders weighing the pros and cons of each approach. Some argued that transparency was key. By showcasing Erebus and its capabilities, humanity could deter potential aggressors while forging alliances with a species who shared their values. After all, the galaxy was vast, and not everyone out there was hostile. There were civilizations yearning for peace, trade, and cooperation. If humanity played its cards right, it could position itself as a leader among equals, a beacon of hope in a chaotic cosmos. Others, however, urged caution. They pointed out that revealing too much too soon could invite trouble. The Valeth weren't the only advanced species lurking in the shadows. Somewhere out there, our others might see Erebus not as a deterrent, but as a target, a prize worth risking everything to claim. By staying quiet, humanity could keep its enemies guessing, forcing them to hesitate before making a move. Secrecy, they argued, was humanity's greatest asset. While these discussions continued, the crew of Erebus reflected on their role in this new chapter of history. They had witnessed firsthand the raw power of their creation, the devastating impact it could have on even the most formidable foes. But they also understood the weight of responsibility that came with wielding such strength. Power wasn't just about winning battles. It was about choosing which battles to fight and why. It was about protecting innocent lives, preserving freedom, and ensuring that humanity's rise didn't come at the expense of others. For many aboard Erebus, the experience changed them. They had joined the mission expecting danger, excitement, and perhaps a bit of glory. What they hadn't anticipated was the moral complexity of their actions. Yes, they had defended themselves against the Valeth, but did that justify the psychological torment inflicted on the alien crew? Did disabling their ships without firing a shot make them heroes, or simply manipulators playing a different kind of game? These questions lingered in their minds, unresolved but impossible to ignore. As days turned into weeks, the story of Erebus began to take on a life of its own. Across the galaxy, reactions varied widely. Some species viewed humanity as saviors, brave defenders standing up to tyranny and oppression. Others saw them as harbingers of doom, and unpredictable and dangerous forces capable of unleashing chaos at will. And then there were those who remained undecided, watching and waiting to see what humanity would do next. On Earth, the impact was equally profound. News of the Valeth's defeat eventually leaked to the public, sparking widespread celebration. For decades, humanity had looked to the stars with a mix of awe and anxiety, wondering if they'd ever truly belong among the great civilizations of the galaxy. Now they had proof, not just of their ability to survive, but of their potential to thrive. Streets filled with cheering crowds, waving flags and chanting slogans that echoed through city squares. Social media buzzed with memes, artwork, and videos celebrating Erebus as a symbol of hope and resilience. Yet amidst the jubilation, there were voices of concern. Philosophers, ethicists, and activists questioned whether humanity was ready for the responsibilities that came with such power. Could they wield it wisely, or would they succumb to the same arrogance that had brought down so many empires before them? Would they use their newfound strength to uplift others, or would they repeat the mistakes of the past, exploiting weaker species for their own gain? These debates weren't confined to Earth. They spilled over into interstellar diplomacy as well. Representatives from neighboring systems reached out, seeking answers and reassurances. Some offered alliances, promising mutual protection and shared resources. Others demanded explanations, accusing humanity of overstepping boundaries and destabilizing the fragile balance of power. Diplomats worked tirelessly to navigate these challenges, crafting responses that struck a delicate balance between confidence and humility. Through it all, Erebus remained silent, drifting serenely in orbit like a guardian angel. Its presence was both comforting and intimidating, a reminder of humanity's achievements and a warning to anyone who dared underestimate them. Inside, Nova continued to monitor the situation, analyzing every development and preparing for whatever might come next. The AI never slept, never rested. It was always ready, always vigilant. And so, humanity stood at a crossroads. They had proven themselves capable of defending their place in the galaxy, but the question remained, what kind of civilization did they want to become? Would they embrace their role as protectors, using their power to foster peace and cooperation? Or would they succumb to fear and mistrust, building walls instead of bridges? The answer wouldn't come easily. It would require difficult conversations, bold decisions, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. But one thing was certain: humanity had earned its seat at the table. No longer were they outsiders looking in. They were participants, contributors, and leaders in their own right. As Erebus orbited silently above Earth, its shadow stretching across continents and oceans, the planet below brimmed with possibility. Humanity had faced extinction-level threats before, emerging stronger each time. Now, armed with technology beyond imagination and guided by lessons learned through trial and error, they prepared to step boldly into the unknown. The galaxy held its breath, watching and waiting. Whatever happened next, now one thing was undeniable: Erebus had left an indelible mark on history. It wasn't just a ship, it was a testament to humanity's ingenuity, determination, and unyielding spirit. And as long as it existed, humanity would never again be underestimated. In the end, the story of Erebus wasn't just about victory or survival. It was about growth, about learning to navigate the complexities of power and responsibility. It was about finding a way to coexist with others, even in a universe that often seemed intent on tearing them apart. And as humanity looked to the stars, dreaming of what lay beyond, they carried with them the echoes of Erebus, a reminder of how far they had come and how much farther they still had to go.